We're talking today with Tony Trovato of Grand Rapids, Michigan, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, now Tony, can you begin with some background on yourself? To start with, where and when were you born?
I was born March 13, 1912. I was born on Grant Street, southwest side of town.
In Grand Rapids.
In Grand Rapids. And from there we moved to Division Avenue. From Division Avenue we went to Sheldon Avenue. And then from Sheldon Avenue my folks took a trip to Europe because he wanted his folks to meet us, the grandparents. Well, going over there at that year was a blessing to me because during the war, when I was sent to Europe, I got to be fortunately in that area that I was born, and I knew what made it the best was I knew the language fluently at the time. I could read it, I could write it, I could understand it, and I could speak it fluently. And that was in Italian. So when I got in France even, I could make it understood, and I got along with the French people in Marseille, in Toulon, and all the villages close by.
Right.
So I really thank the good Lord for giving me such a wonderful trip and being able to be sent over there where I could talk very good with the natives and get along. In fact, the shipmates, every time I go ashore, they had to go ashore with me because I was the interpreter, and which was good. I had the most wonderful skipper. His name was Hotchkiss.
Okay. And what I want to do here is I want to be able to kind of record your story pretty much in order. So we're beginning at the beginning. So your parents were Italian immigrants then?
Yeah, my parents, they were both born in Sicily.
Okay.
In Alcamo is the village town. When I was 12 years old, my parents wanted us, took us to see the grandparents.
Right.
Which was a wonderful trip.
Okay, so that's back about 1924 or so?
That was 1924.
Yeah.
That's right.
All right.
And then we come back to the States.
Okay. Now, what did your father do for a living?
My father worked for Metal Office Furniture Company. He was a finisher. I've cleaning the furniture before it was packed and shipped. Yeah, he worked at Steelcase. And in fact, Mr. Weege asked Dad if he knew somebody that could accommodate a couple people that he had, sponsored. Dad says, sure, they can stay with us. And their name was two brothers. His name was Otto Teese and Rudy Teese. And believe it or not, Arthur Teese lived on the corner over here at the time. I didn't know it, otherwise I would have been over here visiting him. But besides that, when we lived on Ionia Avenue, I got married, and I had a wonderful wife, but she had a lot of problems. Come to find out, she had a bad kidney, and they had to have it removed. And that's when I was overseas. In fact, I had to come home on emergency leave to see her when she come out of the recovery room. Then I had to go back because I only had so much time to come home.
Okay. Now let's go back a little bit, back into your early life here. Your father works for Steelcase. How much schooling did you have? How long did you stay in school?
I only went to the 8th grade. I went to Sheldon School, then I went to Jefferson School, then I ended up at South High School, and I only went through the 8th grade.
Okay. Because
I guess I wasn't too smart in school.
That was all the state required in those days. You only had to go through 8th grade.
Yeah, that's all I could take of English. Because my English teacher, her name was Eaton. I never forgot her. I just couldn't hit it with her. So I quit at the 8th grade.
Okay. Now, did you speak Italian at home?
Fluently.
Okay. But
I
you're,
could talk it, I could read it, and I
Right.
could write it fluently. And
so
well,
after you left school, what did you do?
after I left school, I worked at the grocery stores. I worked for A&P. I was assistant store manager on Division and Franklin Street. They had an A&P store there.
And how old were you when you were doing that?
I think, if I'm not mistaken, I was about 18, 19 years old. I can't tell you definitely.
All right. Okay, but you get an important job pretty soon.
Yeah, I got a job working in the stores, and that was wonderful because I got to meet a lot of people. In fact, on Division, I was assistant store manager on West Side on 3rd and Stocking. What police were across the street from us. They had a station there on 3rd and Stocking. We used to furnish coffee and donuts to the police. Well, I had it made. Then I had to go to Leonard Street, where I had to learn Lithuanian because that's more Lithuanian around the Leonard Street area. I got along pretty good with the Polish people on 3rd and Stocking, but when I got on Leonard Street, I had to understand the people, what they were saying, what they wanted.
And Lithuanian is a totally different language. But, or did they know some Polish?
There's a similarity.
Okay.
There's a similarity there.
Okay. Now this is, we're talking here, we're in the 1930s now. So we're getting into the era of the Depression. Now, did you manage to keep your jobs through all that, or?
I managed because, I wasn't going to sit idle. A lot of people are unemployed. The Depression was really bad. My mother, God bless her, she knew how to make things go, and my dad too. My father used to go out at the farms, and where the farmers used to do their own killing of animals, and that's how we used to get. Dad used to bring home the guts because we used to clean them up, and that was tripe. We used to use the kidneys, the livers, everything out of a cow that Dad used to bring home because the farmers threw that away. Dad knew about that stuff, and there was nothing better to eat than those livers. It was really good liver. But anyway, then what I want to say is,
well, you were basically, you're working for different grocery stores, and then, what year did you get married?
Well, I didn't get married till I was 28 years old.
Okay, so that's a while later then.
Yeah.
All right.
See, I didn't get married till I was 28 years old. In fact, that was my first dating. I was kind of naive in my youth. And it was funny because I used to love to dance. And in those days, my buddy and I, my neighbor and I, we used to go downtown to the Regent Theater. They had an upstairs ballroom. And we used to go there dancing. We used to dance at, there was a Polish hall on the west side. We'd go there dancing. And there was also dancing, I can't think straight right now. But I liked to dance in those days. We used to go to the Boat and Canoe Club. I may have said that.
Not yet.
But believe it or not, I walked from our house, which was between Hall and Franklin Street, right in between there. I walked clear down to the Boat and Canoe Club on the west side, just to go dancing, my buddy and I. Coming home was bad because we had to walk back after all that dancing. Well, I had a wonderful youth life, I can say that. And I had wonderful neighbors and friends. Like I said, I only went through the 8th grade. And I loved mostly math. Math was my number one subject that I liked. English, forget it. I couldn't make out the phrases and all that stuff. I couldn't see that English stuff. And the other, history, I didn't think much about history either. I should have got into it, but I didn't. But other than that, really,
Okay.
you'll have to coach me on it because.
Well, that's okay. I mean, you're doing well. So basically, now, so you get married in 1940, roughly, you about there?
Yeah, I got married in 1948.
Well,
or 40. Was it
you said you were about 28 when you got married?
I was 28 when I got married.
That would be about 1940.
So it'd be 1940, yeah.
Okay.
See, I can't figure it right now.
All right. Now, how did you meet your wife?
My wife, that was funny. When I worked at the AP store, one of the clerks, he was married. His name was Joe Schmitz. And Joe Schmitz, his wife had a sister. Bud had a sister. No, it was Nona May that had a sister.
Okay.
Said, I'd like to have you meet her. So we got married. We met each other. She was older than me, but eye contact, we fell in love right away. She was older, but it didn't make any difference to me. In fact, God bless her, she taught me a lot in life because I was naive all the way through life. And with Nella, with Hazel, we had a wonderful life. Unfortunately, she had a lot of back problems, which she had gone to doctors galore. In fact, one of the doctors, I can't think of his name, I know the name, lived on Granville, and she used to go to him. Finally, we went to a chiropractor, and a chiropractor always scans the back and takes an x-ray. It warned her. Said, Mrs. Trovato, you got a bad kidney. You should have that taken care of. That's your duodenal, she says, and that's your inlet where it goes into your kidney. And so we did, but the chiropractor says, don't say that I mentioned that. So we went, and the doctor, he ignored it. He said, no, there's nothing wrong with you. It's just in your head that you got back problem. And my wife kept saying, it can't be, kid. I got pain in my back all the time. We went to that doctor twice. He said, no, you're all right. Finally, that's when we went to the chiropractor, and the chiropractor said, you got a bad kidney, you got to go to a surgeon. And we went to Dr. I can't think right his name.
That's okay, but you went to a surgeon.
We went to a surgeon, and he says, yeah. The first time, he said, no, you're okay. But the second time, he must have checked his x-ray over again, which, kind of made us feel funny. But then we had to have that kidney removed. And having her kidney removed, it was the time that I had enlisted. That's when I got shipped overseas. See, in fact, I had to get an emergency leave from Norfolk to Grand Rapids. And not having any money to speak of, I thumbed it all the way back to Grand Rapids. Well, I come into Grand Rapids, and I saw her have her surgery, but then I had to go back, and I didn't know while she was in recovery, so I had to go back. Well, I went back to the ship, and lo and behold, as I was going back, because I was flying with the Army Transport Command, which gave me free flight, and when I got to Norfolk, well, before I got that, on the flight back, I could smell that coffee. No, I couldn't afford a ticket. the girls at the station, they took up a collection and paid for my fare for from Washington. That's it, Washington D.C. to Norfolk. Which I'm sorry to this day that I never took their names so as I could thank them again. Right. But as I was flying from Washington to Norfolk, they were brewing coffee, and I refused coffee, and I refused the toast and everything, and the girls were saying, "Tony, don't you want some coffee or something?" I said, "No, I thought you had to pay for it." And I didn't even have a penny in my pocket. I was starving from the day before. I hadn't had nothing to eat. I didn't have supper. I didn't have breakfast. I didn't have nothing. And my God, when I got back on board ship, I was explaining to him, I said, "Boy," I said, "I'm glad that I got back on ship because," I said, in fact, I can't even talk to you." I said, "I got to have a cup of coffee." So we had coffee brewed for me. And they made coffee and toast and everything for me. Because I was well loved by my skipper and the guys. We were both the same age. We were both 33 at the time. Boy, was I grateful for that, because on that plane flying back on an empty stomach was no fun.
I'll believe it. Okay, now let's go back again here, back into your story. So you worked in the grocery store, and now, when did you leave the grocery store and go to work, go into the factory work?
Well, I got a chance to work in Grand Rapids Brass. No, wait a minute, excuse me, Metal Office.
Okay.
I went to Metal Office Furniture Company. I worked there as an assembler, and they had a little punch press. I worked the punch press too. And how was it? Well, there I signed up to go in the Navy.
Right.
I volunteered in the Navy. Well, I had a good rating while I was in the service, because I abide with the rules, and I was eager to be a good member. And it's the best thing I could have ever done, join the Navy, because I got 3 square meals a day and a good bed to sleep in. I wasn't going to go in the Army, because they had planned to put me in the Army when I went to Kalamazoo for my physical. They assigned me to go with the Army people. I said, "No, I signed up with the Navy." "Oh," the guy says, "then you go in the Navy."
All right. Now to back up again a little bit, where were you working when Pearl Harbor happened?
When Pearl Harbor happened, I was working at Metal Office.
Okay, so you had gone over to there by then.
I was at the Metal Office Furniture Company at the time.
Okay. And how did you learn about Pearl Harbor?
Well, through the news media.
Okay.
You couldn't miss it. Couldn't miss it. And I worked there. I had a very good job. I was foreman of the assembly department for Metal Office, which is some steel case now.
Right.
And I had, I think it was four guys or 5 guys under me. And my foreman's name was Frank Harmon, the foreman. He says, "Oh, am I glad to see you when I come back from the war." He says, "You know, Tony," he says, you guys thought I made a lot of money when you were overseas." I says, "Frank, that was the least in my mind." He said, "You don't know how lucky you were to dodge bullets." He said, "I couldn't get meat and butter. At that time, I doubled up my fist and I was going to pop him one, but there was L. Terrell standing by there. He shook his head. He says, "Don't do that. Don't do that," you know.
So he was trying to tell you how hard it was to be back home.
He was suffering because he couldn't get any meat and butter.
Yeah. Oh, well.
And I thought, "Oh, what the hell?" So I says, "You know, Frank, you can take your job and shove it." I did, and I quit. So at that time, I lived on Dorothy Street, which is on the west side. And right across the street from me there was this, oh God, he's a Swedish guy. I know his name.
What kind of place was it?
Pardon?
What sort of business was it?
Well, he was diecast.
Okay.
He was in diecast. He was the best diecast man in the state of Michigan, because when I went to junior college to get my papers, they said you had the best teacher in the country on die casting. I says, oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, he was wonderful. All I can think is Rudy Teese and Aldo Teese. It isn't that.
All right, but that's still getting ahead of your story again.
Yeah.
But when we get you back from the war, we can go back there and see if you remember him. But for right now, we kind of need to go back again. You're 1941. Pearl Harbor happens.
Yeah.
Now did you have a deferment at this time?
I had a deferment.
Okay.
Because, my being in the service and all that.
Well,
and I didn't want a deferment.
Right.
I wanted to enlist in the Navy because I didn't want to go in the Army. No way you're going to get me in the Army.
Well, but the point is that at the time that you enlisted, you still had a deferment. You didn't have to go when you went.
I wouldn't have had to go.
Right.
No.
Right. Okay. That's the main point.
My wife, she was alien. In fact, she had to have a kidney removed.
Right.
In fact, as I had to get emergency leave to see her.
Right, and you talked about that a little bit, but basically, what was her response when you told her you wanted to go to the Navy?
She says, you do what you want to do. What makes you happy. I had the best wife anybody could ever ask for.
All right. So you've made that commitment, and this is March of 1943 when you do that. Now, was that when you went to go get your physical? After you signed up?
Yeah, I signed up. After I had to sign up first, then they sent me to Kalamazoo for my physical.
All right. And at the physical, do you remember what they did?
Well, they gave me a thorough physical examination, but then after the physical, they put you on assignment, whether you go in the Navy or the Army or this. I says, he assigned me to the Army. I said, no way. I says, I volunteered. So I volunteered for the Navy. So you put me in the Navy, which they did, which I was grateful.
All right. Now, where did they send you for boot camp?
I was stationed at Great Lakes. At Great Lakes, it was wonderful. In fact, with my ability and all that, I made boatswain second. Well, I had a good oh God, what's that word?
Oh. Were you good mechanically or good with math? Or
I was good at everything. But I was good to, oh God, I'm telling you, this is really wearing out. So, I was in boot camp, and then
Now, when you were in boot camp, were you one of the older guys?
I was the oldest guy. I was the oldest guy in the group by 10 years. I was the oldest guy in our boot camp at Great Lakes.
Yep.
And that's why I guess they made me second-class boatswain. And I had troops under my authority. I got along real wonderful with all my buddies.
But you also came in with a good attitude, though. You wanted to be there and do a good job.
Right. That was my. As long as I'm there, make the most of it.
Okay. Now, what did they actually teach you in boot camp? What were you learning?
At boot camp. Well, at boot camp, all they tell you calisthenics and stuff like that. And but to me, and how to handle people, personnel.
Yep.
See how to handle people, troops and stuff. And that's about all I did is take care of the troops, my platoons and stuff like that. But well, anyway, eventually I got assigned to go to Norfolk. First it was Little Creek, Virginia. Then it was I'm trying to say Cambridge. There was another training camp there.
Mm-hmm.
We learned for anti-aircraft firing and handling people. Oh, and I learned how to maneuver the ship. That's where I learned to be a boatswain
Mm-hmm.
when I was in the Navy. What was that town? But I really made an effort to be the best of my ability and everything, and I did. I got good ratings, and that's the word I was trying to think.
Mm-hmm.
I got my good rating there. In fact, my skipper wanted to make me first class boatswain. I said no, because I don't want to get transferred.
Okay. Well, now at a certain point, you get assigned to be a crewman on an LST.
Yeah.
But when you first went to Norfolk, were you given that assignment, or does that come later?
My assignment was as a boatswain. I got that when I was in Norfolk.
Okay.
I got that in Norfolk.
Okay. And what kind of ship were you working on in Norfolk?
I was on an LST.
Okay.
I got on an LST right off the bat. See, in fact, no, take it back. I was not on an LST at the time. I had my boat training. We went to Norfolk. Then, how the heck did I get? Well, we had small boat training.
Okay.
We had small boat training. Then, that's when I got assigned to go to Seneca, Illinois. That it comes a little bit at a time. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's good. That's good. You're doing well.
We went to. I got assigned to go to Seneca, Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we picked up our 601, our LST, which is pictures there.
Right.
Then we went up the Illinois, down the Illinois River to the Mississippi.
Now, when you went to Seneca, Illinois,
Yeah.
did they send a full crew or just enough guys to sail the ship?
It was just enough guys to fill the ship.
Okay. Or to sail it, to run it, yeah.
It wasn't just me. It was a full
you had
crew.
the captain and the officers and the guys from the engine room and so forth.
In fact, I got pictures of them too.
Okay.
My skippers, and I got a picture of the crew. I got a picture of everything. In fact, I got the map of where I was and all that.
Okay. So
I was blessed all the way by volunteering.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I think that's what did it. Had I not volunteered, I probably would have been in the army digging foxholes and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you're on the boat. You go down the Illinois River and then
down the Mississippi, and then when we got down in Mississippi, we went to how was it? Yeah, we picked up our LST in Seneca, Illinois, down the Illinois River, down the Mississippi. Then when we got down to Norfolk, we made a beeline for Algiers,
all right,
Africa. Then we went across to Europe.
Okay.
From Algiers.
Now tell me a little bit about, first of all, what do you remember about that trip down the rivers, down the Illinois and the Mississippi?
The thing I remember, see the coastline as we were going down the river, see the people, they were waving at us and all that. In fact, we had to stop overnight. We dropped anchor overnight on the river because we couldn't make it all the way through. And we stopped in this place, and it's kind of a place that was, had brush there, so they couldn't be seen. So we stayed there overnight. Then we pulled anchor. Then we continued to go on down to the Mississippi.
Okay. Now, did you stop in any of the ports along the way?
No.
So you didn't stop in New Orleans?
The only stop we made was halfway over there,
Okay.
and I forget where that was.
Well, okay. So you weren't stopping off in New Orleans or things like that?
Yeah, we did stop in New Orleans.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm glad you said that. See, this doesn't work very good. Yeah, we stopped at New Orleans, and there, believe it or not, the officers left me. The officer, because I was in a small boat, an LCVP. I wasn't on the LST. I had one of the small boats from our LST.
Okay.
And they wanted to go to New Orleans. So there was two officers, Hotchkiss, and I can't think the other guy's name. I dropped them off over there to New Orleans. And this was in the afternoon. And I waited there on a landing dock, and I waited there, and it got dark. And I didn't know the area. No way would I know the area. Here they come, buzzed up to the gills. So they got back on our small boat. Then we got back on a small boat.
And could you find the LST?
Believe it or not, the good Lord was with me because I had to go through that bay to find our LST, and it was nighttime.
Yep.
And I didn't know my way around. I didn't know which was east, north, west, or south, or what. And the good Lord blessed me. I made a beeline for across the bay, and sure enough, I had right in front of our 601.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they got on there. The cars, they were still kind of buzzed up. And in fact, I forgot. When the old man, Hotchkiss, went up the ladder, he lost his footing. He went in the drink between the boat and the dock. We fished him out. We took him into his quarters.
Yeah.
Oh, that was something, though. But, you know, it was amazing that I could find our 601 not knowing the area.
Right. Now, were they enforcing a blackout in New Orleans, or were there lights on?
Well, the blackout was all enforced during the war.
So that would be pretty tough then.
That was pretty tough, is right, because, you know, I couldn't have our lights on or nothing. I relied on my ability to see.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day, I lay my bad eyes to being out in the sun all the time, being on a lookout all the time, because I got bad eyes. In fact, even now they're smarting like crazy. You know, although, you know, I really enjoyed being in the service, and I thank my good dear wife that she says, you go ahead, sign up.
Okay. Now, you leave New Orleans, you have to go out into the Caribbean now to get around, to get up to Norfolk. Now, did you go in a convoy, or were you by yourself?
On convoy.
Okay.
We went on convoy, and believe it or not, there was U-boats. I think the German E-boats or U-boats, I forget.
U-boats are the submarines.
No, not the submarine.
And the E-boats are the ones that are like big PT boats?
Like a PT boat.
Yeah.
The PT boats.
Those are the E-boats, yeah.
Yeah, the PT boats, patrol boats. I forget, one of the two, the Germans, they attacked us. They were attacking us, and we were going after them too. Finally, they had more powerful boats than we did, and they took off.
Yeah, but that would have been in the Mediterranean, though. That was in the Mediterranean. Yeah, that's not in the Caribbean. In the Caribbean, you just have U-boats.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Caribbean, around to Norfolk, and then when you got to Norfolk, then did you take on the rest of your crew there? Or the gunners?
No, we picked up the rest of their crew there in Norfolk.
Okay.
In fact, I still got buddies that I keep in touch all the time.
All right. And then, did you load on cargo there? Did you fill up the LST with supplies or equipment?
Our supplies on our LST, our supply was tanks, jeeps, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And at one time, we had 6 LCVPs, landing crafts, small boats, 3 on each side, and each one of those were loaded with 12 tons of dynamite, and they were radio controlled. Believe you me, if a bullet would have hit one of those LCVPs, we wouldn't be making this interview.
Right, okay.
Well, I was scared. I got to admit, I was scared because they were radio controlled. In fact, before we loaded them, we were playing with them. One guy would control one boat and the other guy control the other boat. Oh, we had more fun with those LCVPs. Apex, they called them.
All right. Now, on that trip across the Atlantic, you go from Norfolk across to Algiers. Were you again with a convoy?
We were on convoy.
Okay. Now, do you remember what the weather was like going over? Was it okay or stormy?
on an LST, you got to be on one of those when you hit a storm. We fed the fish. I didn't because I could take it.
Mm-hmm.
It just made the kids seasick because, you know, bobbing up like a cork. A lot of guys were really sick. I felt sorry for them because it didn't bother me. And I don't know why they should have got sick.
Mm-hmm.
I ate the same foods. We had, I can't explain what a wonderful crew we had, really. But to this day, in fact, one of my buddies called me yesterday, wished me a 100th birthday.
Right. Now, did you have pretty much the same crew the whole way through?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because that's a really good thing to have.
Yeah. We had the same crew all the way through.
All right. Now, on that trip across the Atlantic, did you have any U-boat scares, or was?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. When we hit, where was it?
Was it like a Gibraltar or someplace?
Yeah, it was around Gibraltar.
Mm-hmm.
These German U-boats. I forget what they call them, U-boats or E-boats.
Well,
it's one of the two.
These are the ones on the surface?
On a PT, yeah.
Yeah, the E-boats, yeah.
PT boats.
Yeah.
They were after us.
Mm-hmm.
They were, and they fired 2 torpedoes because they had 2 torpedoes on each side of the.
Right.
They fired 2 T-boats at us.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, our LSC is shallow, only 8-inch draft. They went under us.
Right under you.
Oh, were we happy. See, dumb German guys over there, they didn't know enough to set it a little higher on the surface. But they were scared that they go up, you know, and they could see the wake and maybe make us move. But, I wasn't supposed to be. I mean, I guess the good Lord, you weren't supposed to get hit because we hit some bad ones.
Yep.
I'm just lucky that I got this stuff to.
Right. Okay. So you get into the Mediterranean now, and then your convoy goes to Algiers. That's your next step. Now, at that point, did you stay there very long, or did you just move out again?
No, we moved out right away. See, we at Algiers. Wait a minute. At Algiers, we went across the bay to load up with supplies, with more diesel and more food.
Right.
Because that was our last point of going overseas. So we loaded up with supplies.
Right.
What the heck they call that? It was in Algiers, right across the bay.
Well, the other big port is a place called Oran. And then there's places.
Oran, yeah, that's it.
All right.
We went to Oran. That's where we loaded with supplies. See, and when we come back, that's when we come back. Then we went overseas. Not overseas. We went to.
Well, did you go to France directly, or somewhere in Italy first?
No, we went to France.
Okay.
We went.
And that's taking. Now, were you taking part in the invasion then in southern France? When we're first landing?
See, the first was the Normandy invasion.
Right.
We missed the Normandy invasion, but we did hit the southern France invasion.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. We loaded up, and that's when we had our southern France invasion. In fact, I got pictures.
Well, not now probably because we're on camera.
Oh, yeah.
You can show them to me later.
Yeah.
But so you land now. So were you in a position? Were you up someplace where you could see what was happening during the invasion?
I was on the bow of the ship.
Okay.
I was first gunner on the first gun on the ship, a 20 millimeter. I think it was 20 or 40 millimeter gun. I was right on the bow with the 20 meter or 40. I can't think.
Okay, but you got a bird's eye view though.
Oh, I had a camera. They wouldn't let us have cameras. Yeah, and in those days they wouldn't let us. The only pictures I got is what the officers took. And even then, the officers didn't take many pictures. We had to buy what pictures I got. I had to buy from the officers.
Right. Okay. So what do you remember about that landing?
The landing?
Yeah.
Well, we hit the beach. We opened up the doors, and all the troops went out. And there was gunfire. There was gunfire, because we didn't stay there because we'd have been sitting ducks. So we pulled our anchor, because we drop anchor and we'd come back with a capstan.
Right.
And then we hightailed it back to resupply.
And
That's it.
Now, did you come back again to bring more supplies? Did you go back and forth?
We went back the second time around, but the second time around, by that time, there wasn't too much.
Right.
So we didn't have to worry about gunfire and all that.
But you're still bringing supplies in.
But we still bring supplies in. Yeah, we had to bring more ammunition for the troops that were over there, because the troops that we were supplying, that's how they managed to get around.
Okay.
All our, our munitions, munitions and, oh God.
Well, they needed everything, fuel, food, ammunition.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we were mostly running around with flotilla that time. No, we didn't go alone. The only time we went alone is, like I said, when I took those officers to Norfolk.
Right.
But other than that, over there overseas, we were mostly at war.
But now, after that one invasion landing, though, you're not directly attacking anybody after that. You're just moving the ship back and forth, and sometimes you might get shot
what
at.
we did is we loaded up with prisoners.
Oh, okay.
We had a boatload of, I got pictures of the prisoners. We took on boatloads of prisoners and brought them back, see, because they had to take them to,
back to North Africa or prison camps, yeah.
To the camp, prison camp. And that's what we did. We hauled all the prisoners back.
Right. Yeah. Did you get a good look at the prisoners?
Oh yeah.
And what impression did you have of them? What did they look like?
They're just like us. They're another people. And what was fascinating, that I made friends with them. I made friends with them. I gave them cigarettes. And in fact, I had two of the German prisoners gave me ornaments. One guy gave me see, the Germans used to, when they mail letters, they used to use sealing wax, and he gave me his sealer. It was a little statuette, silver statuette with his signature on it. When he have his signature on it. Dumb fool me, I sold it.
Oh well.
I needed money. In fact, I sold it here 2 years ago. It makes me mad, because I come home, because when we were overseas in France, there was a military school, and they had a lot of old swords, boarding swords, and guns, pistols, cap and ball pistols, stuff like that. So I had 6 cap and ball pistols and 2 boarding swords. I had a heck of a time carrying, but I made it. Took on board ship, and the guys, they too got them. I wasn't alone. The guys got them too. But I should have kept some of it. My grandson, I gave one of the guns to my grandson. He still has his,
Good.
which I'm grateful.
All right.
They had ornate silver on a pistol grip. Oh, I had beautiful stuff.
All right. Okay, so the prisoners that you were bringing back, these were not SS guys or something like that. They were just regular Germans?
They were regular German. Yeah. They were just like you and I. The way we treated them, like us, we gave them good food. We gave them everything. Getting close to the end?
Not yet.
Oh, no, we gave them food and clothes. They appreciated it very much. We gave them cigarettes, which they were grateful for. But really, the only thing I didn't like is when we hauled some Gurkhas and Jerkins. See, when we were to, where was it?
They were in Italy.
Yeah, it was in Italy, in France. We had to take in a load of Gurkhas and Sinhalese. because they too were fighting with the British at the time.
Yeah.
We hauled them around too.
Well, the Senegalese were French colonial troops,
Yeah,
and the Gurkhas were British ones from Nepal.
yeah. I
Yeah.
forget which.
Yeah.
Which
But
was which.
there were a lot of French colonial troops who were going in that invasion in southern France, because there were a lot of French troops who went, and a lot were recruited in different parts of Africa. So you had North African troops, Algerians, goons, people like that, and you had Senegalese from West Africa. But the British were using Gurkhas in the Mediterranean, so they were there
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. That's what we had on board
Mhm.
ship as prisoners, as Gurkhas and Sinhalese.
Well, they wouldn't be prisoners; they're just passengers.
They were prisoners.
But they were on our side.
Yeah, wait a minute. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they were on our side. I forget now what.
Mhm.
I'm getting
That's
mixed
okay.
up now.
That's okay.
But the German prisoners, I still got pictures of them, of the German prisoners that we took on.
All right. Now, where else did you visit in the Mediterranean? What other places did you stop at?
Well, the places we stopped was in in France, which was Toronto,
Well, France, Marseille, Toulon, and
I
Cannes.
forget
Yeah,
a lot of those.
yeah. The French. Okay, so southern France. Okay.
And then in Italy too, we went to Toronto
Yeah.
and Palermo.
Mm-hmm.
Palermo was a base there.
Yeah. Naples.
Naples, oh yeah, Naples. Yeah, that was a big country.
Livorno.
I guess I got it all there. And Palermo, Naples. I even got to, believe it or not, when we were over there, the skipper says, "Don't you have relatives close by?"
Mm-hmm.
And I says, "Yes." I says, "My cousins." He says, "Would you like to go visit them?" He says, "I would love that. You know where they live?" I said, "Sure." Fortunately, when I was 12 years old, 1924,
Mhm.
my dad took us to meet the grandparents, and I knew exactly how to get to where I had to go.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, when I was rapping on doors to my relatives, nobody opened doors. Nobody opened doors because I was in uniform. They were scared that they were going to be, taken in or
Mhm.
something. So finally, I went to the last place I could go, and the people that answered the door said, "Who are you looking for?" I says, "I'm looking for my cousin, Andrew Trovato." And he says, "Oh," he says, "just a minute." He comes back with my cousin. So I asked my cousin, "Who was your neighbor that he talked plain English?" Oh, he said he got deported because he was with the mafia from Chicago. Oh, that was fascinating. And I had, good thing that I could talk the language. I got a free ride, a personal ride to my relatives with the Army Transport Command. They furnished my transportation, took me here and there and everything. I like I say, I was blessed because the language
Mm-hmm.
that did it. Oh, to this day, not too much longer, is there?
Oh, well, tape is cheap. I just load a new one, but we still have some time left on this one. So, yeah. So now, in what were there other circumstances where being able to speak the language helped you? Other things that happened?
When I was in France, I was in Pompeii. No, that was in Italy.
That's Italy.
When I was in Pompeii, the guide that used to show people tourists, he says, "Tony," he says, "oh, I'm so glad that you're here." I said, "Well, I'm happy too." But I says, I can't think of the guy's name. I says, I miss a good dish of spaghetti and a good glass of wine. He says, every time I have a glass of wine at a pub, it tastes like kerosene to me. He says, "You come with me to my house." So he takes me to his villa. It's a house, Takes me to his villa. He gets a shovel, digs up the food, the spaghetti and the sauce. Tells his wife, "We got my friend here wants a good dish of spaghetti and make sauce. And she did. I was blessed there too because of my language.
Mm-hmm.
So they dig up the spaghetti, and I was surprised that the spaghetti was still good, but they had it wrapped up good before they buried it. Because when the Germans were there, they took everything, all the food. Yeah. And I had a wonderful, wonderful dinner. And my buddy and I, we took $10 bill apiece, we put it on the table. Don't you insult me. Don't you insult me. Mm-hmm. No, you take that. Don't you take that. We could have been killed. No, you take that away. No, we took food out of your mouth. You take it. No way. But before we left the money. We were going to take it because they took the food out of their mouth for us to enjoy. I had the wonderful experiences while I was over there. Thank God that I knew the language.
Right. Now, what condition was Naples in when you went there?
Naples was pretty well bombed up. Naples was really bombed. And Palermo was bombed a little bit too. And of course, Alcamo, there was no bombing there. Mm-hmm. And where was, that's the only thing. Oh, when I went to the Army Transport Command, that's where I missed out a little bit to talk. Mm-hmm. I asked him, I says, are the trucks still coming in from the south? Very few, he said, once in a while. I says, well, he said, why? No, then I says, well, how about the buses? He says, you mean to tell me you think you're going to get on a bus with what you're carrying? Because the skipper says you take all the rations you want to take to go take to your relatives. I loaded up 2 big suitcases with frozen beef, sugar, and coffee. I could hardly carry it. He laughed like hell. He says, you think you're going to take that? No, he says, you tell me where you're going to go and I'll have my driver take you right to your relative's house. And that's where I hit the jackpot too, because he had a driver at his disposal, and a driver took me to my relatives in Alcamo, and I dropped off there. And I had so many days, and the driver says, I'll be back at a certain time. Whenever you say you want me to come back. I said, I got 5 days. You can come back in 5 days. Right on the dot, he was there in 5 days. But my relatives are there. They were in seventh heaven with all the stuff that I brought them. Sugar, coffee, and frozen beef. Because they never had that before.
Yeah.
Oh, I had the most wonderful skipper anybody could ever ask. His name was Hotchkiss, Junior Grade Hotchkiss.
Okay, and tell me a little bit about him. You said he was about your age?
We were both 33 years old, and the guy, the trouble with him, he was good. He was a young guy, but he liked his drinks. Because when we were in Norfolk, he come back drunker than a hoot owl.
And would he do that in Italy too?
No, he couldn't in Italy.
Okay.
He couldn't because, he doesn't know his way around over there. In Italy, what they did, the red light district. So that's where they hit it for. Of course, they had drinks too, but they didn't drink to the extent where they didn't know where they were.
Right.
Because they didn't know how they're going to get back on board ship.
Did the Navy or anybody give you any warnings about stuff you shouldn't be doing when you went into port?
They told us to stay away from the red districts. We were not allowed. In fact, I was ME, Master of Arms. I still got my band. I can show you. I got my band, my belt, because I was what the heck they call it? Master.
You were shore patrol?
Shore patrol, that's it. I was shore patrol. And I had it made. I really did. Even when we were here in the States, I was, shore patrol over there, and I was shore patrol here in the States when I was stationed in Great Lakes. I was, a shore patrol for Waukegan, and I had to make sure the guys behave themselves. Because we carried a 45 in our belt and all that.
All right.
We didn't carry batons. Some guys did,
So
but I had a 45.
Okay. So when you're on shore patrol in one of these ports in the Mediterranean, would you have to go into the bars and stuff and find your guys and drag them out?
I had to go out the bars. If I saw any sailors in the bars, come on, buddy, you know you're not supposed to be here. Of course, I had my SP. I still got my SP badge. I can show it to you. And so they had to follow me. And it's a shame, too, because we used to go with the door would close, open up, and they were in action. I felt terrible, but what are you going to do? You got to do your job.
Now, did any of them put up a fight?
No.
Okay, so they...
We never had any trouble with any of the guys that we stopped.
Okay. Now, were you only picking up your own guys, or were you chasing out all the sailors?
Just any sailors.
Okay.
Any sailors. Any sailors that were in a red light zone, out.
They all had to go. Okay. All right. Now, you did a lot of sailing around back and forth in the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
And it looks like on your map, you even went up into the Adriatic Sea and as far up as Venice.
Well, that part I didn't go to.
Okay, you didn't go on that part?
I didn't go on the other side.
Okay.
I was,
So did you
discharged.
You were discharged while the ship was still in the Mediterranean?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while you were sailing around, aside from that first attack from the E-boats, were there other dangerous times there? Did you see any German aircraft or submarines?
Oh, yeah, aircraft. And we saw submarines. We saw submarines off the coast, in Europe. And we could see the scope and as they were going down. But other than that, aircraft were flying and E-boats. It was mostly
E-boats?
Craft. I call them PT boats.
Right, okay.
PT boats. Mostly PT. They had better PT boats than our Navy did.
Yeah, they did.
They did. They were faster.
They were
and
bigger.
more maneuverable.
Yeah, they're bigger and faster. Yeah.
They were about the same size, but they were more maneuverable. I know they were fast as hell. Because our PT boat guys, they had a guy with them that had to shoot at them. They had a hard time catching up with them.
Yeah.
Oh, those were. I'm grateful to the good Lord carried me safely through that. Like I say, I didn't expect it, but I wrote this before you were with me.
All right. So let's
those.
You got that and that. All right. Now, did you also sail to places like Corsica or Sardinia?
Yeah, we went to Corsica and Sardinia. We went there with troops. We had to pick up supplies in those food, vegetables and stuff like that. That's why we made those trips there.
Yeah. Now, did you get to kind of go ashore and explore a little bit when you went to those places? Okay.
Yeah. The only place we didn't get to explore was in where the heck was it? No.
Was Iran or?
Iran. Yeah. It was in Africa.
Yeah, that was dangerous.
Yeah, we couldn't go exploring in Africa.
Yeah.
Algiers and stuff in there.
Right.
No, there we couldn't, but I could in Italy, in France too.
Yep.
Because in France we went to Marseille. In fact, I brought souvenirs from Italy. Like I told you, I had cap and ball pistols that I caught from museum and swords. Oh, I hit it wonderful. And I had shipmates that were with me because we didn't go alone. We had to have a buddy. Any place we went overseas, we had buddies.
Yeah.
In fact, we went into a museum. I could have got all kinds of good art stuff out of a museum in Toulon. I didn't want to go in there, but my buddy did, and he got himself a beautiful little souvenir. It was a oh God,
like a statue or
A little
bake?
statue.
Okay.
Yeah, a little statue. It was a beautiful statue. I've tried to buy it from him. He says, no way.
Yeah. But that would be stealing, though, wouldn't it? You're stealing it
That
from the
was.
museum? Yeah.
See,
Okay.
that was against the law.
Yeah.
That, in fact, he got that. Another thing, too. Other guys got stuff, too. That was considered stealing.
Okay. So the museum was just unguarded and abandoned, or?
They were abandoned.
Yeah, okay.
In fact, I'll tell you another good one, too. When we were in Toulon, there was a music store there, and we picked up a piano, and we brought it on deck, believe it or not. We put it on deck, and we secured it on one of the posts, you know, on the tent deck.
Yeah.
Oh, we had more fun with that piano than cars got pills. Oh, you'll be surprised the number of servicemen that could play the piano. All I could do is one key at a time. Oh God, we had so much fun. It was war. It was dangerous, but we made fun of it. I mean, we just made what could be done.
Okay. Now this take around the Mediterranean. At some point, you got over to Athens, in Greece.
Yeah.
And do you remember what you were doing there, or anything that happened?
No, we were to Athens, and we got to see the Acropolis, and what that other name? We got to see the ruins.
Right.
So it was just another shipmate and I.
Yeah. So did you just go to Athens once, or?
Once.
Yeah.
Once.
Did you go anyplace else in the Eastern Mediterranean, or were you otherwise mostly kind of between Italy and France and that area?
We were in Corsica, Sardinia,
Yep.
and we were there.
Yep.
But I can't offhand say where else.
Okay, but it wasn't like, but you didn't go to Egypt or
No, I didn't go
Cyprus
to
or
Egypt.
someplace like that. Yeah.
No.
Okay. All right. Now, on board the ship, you had. Did you have a medical doctor, or just somebody who was a medical corpsman?
He was more a medical doctor here.
Yep.
Picture of him. This was our doc.
Right.
In fact, I got it on there, doc.
Yep.
Yeah, doc.
But-
Smitter, yeah.
Okay, but he was an actual doctor. He wasn't just a corpsman or something like that.
No, he was just he was considered a doctor, because they all got their officers.
Okay.
Otherwise, he
Yeah.
wouldn't have been.
Yeah. If he's an officer, he's a doctor. Yeah. Okay. Now, and you also had some black crewmen. You had some stewards who worked for the officers.
We had stewards
Yeah, you have them in one of your pictures, right?
Yeah.
Now, those guys, did they just keep to themselves the whole time, or did you hang out with them, or?
We hung out.
Yeah.
We hung out together.
'Cause it's not a big crew.
No, and when you figure we're living together for almost 3 years, we were just like a family. No, we didn't have any trouble with the black people at all.
Yeah. I mean, did you find it kind of odd that they could only be stewards and nothing else, or did you just not think about it?
We didn't think nothing about it. See, the captains are the only one. I mean, the officers, the ones that had those black people.
Right.
They were their stewards. I mean, that's how they got. But that was their.
Well, it was about the
their
only.
bonus.
It was the only. Well, but it was. I'm thinking from the other side. It's about the only job that black men could have in the Navy at that point.
At that point, yeah.
If they were on a
That's
ship,
right,
that was the only
yeah.
thing they could do.
Yeah. Although we had black people in our crew too. Yeah, that was our crew. I don't know if there's a picture of them or not in there. No, I don't think there was a black man.
No, the Navy was segregated.
Yeah.
There were only certain jobs that black men could do with the
That's
Navy.
right.
You could be stevedores, they could be, and otherwise, and then stewards. And on a ship, a steward was about the only job they could have. That was just how it was in those days.
See, the deckhands. I don't think I had a black guy
you
on
wouldn't.
the deckhands.
No.
It was just a steward for the officers.
Right.
That's right. You're right.
That's how it worked in those days.
We thought, boy, that's pretty good. those guys had it made.
Yeah. Okay. Now, in general, though, I mean, did the food in the Navy live up to its billing? I mean,
Very good food. Fortunately, we had a very good cook on our crew on our ship. See, some of the crews didn't have as good a chef, and they were complaining. But the food that we had, like I say, we had a wonderful cook at our disposal.
Okay. Now, when you think back to that time when you spent kind of cruising around the Mediterranean, are there any other sort of individual incidents or things that happened to you that tend to come back to you a lot? Particular memories of people or events?
No. The only incident I remember is, like I said, we went to Pompeii, and I told you the story about him. And that was really a good thing right there. But other than that, I could talk the language fluently with all the natives over there, which was to my advantage, really. In fact, when I used to go ashore, Tony, we're coming with you. We're coming with you. The skipper, he was good to us. In fact, more than once I had to interpret with the skipper. With the skipper, I had to interpret because he didn't know Italian language. But it's funny that I was brought up in Italian, and I could read it, I could write it, I could talk it, and I could understand it fluently.
Now,
but today, forget it.
Okay. Well, now, when you were ashore, when you were in Italy and so forth, how did the civilians view the Americans? I mean, how did they treat you or deal with you?
Oh, they loved the sailors. Oh, they loved the American people because the natives over there, they blessed us for being there. Because the Italian people, they didn't like war. They didn't like war because, people killing each other for what?
Yeah, and they suffered a lot. And they took a lot of losses, and there were a lot of problems there.
The Italian people suffered more than the French people did. In fact, their food supply in Italy was less than what they had in France. For France, they could get it from northern countries, and they managed pretty good.
Well, the French grew a lot of food. It's a very fertile area, and they grew a lot of fruits and vegetables and things like that you had to kind of consume right there. So they did a little better, and they weren't actively at war in the same way that the Italians were. So yeah, it was a different situation, certainly. All right. Now, how do you remember learning that you were going to be able to go home? How did you get the news that you were going home?
Well, the skipper, he knew my circumstances. See, that's how I got to go home. In fact, my time, you're supposed to be in the Navy. I was in the reserves. I think the time was 2 years. But they extended to 3 years that you had to be enlisted. If you were, during the war it was 3 years. The peacetime is 2 years. The enlistment time. So no, I think the skipper, I had a good skipper, and he figured, you've earned it. The only thing I got is commendation. What they call it, commendation.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I got, other than European theater and American theater, stuff like that.
Okay. Now, so your skipper, though, he arranged it, so he tells you, okay, you can go home?
Well, it's up to him, yeah.
Yeah, so he tells you. And then how did you get home then? If the ship is still in the Mediterranean, how did you get home? No, I mean from Europe.
From Europe. Now it's coming. Yeah. I got put on a transport. A transport boat. Where personnel transport.
Right.
So I got transport from over there, and I ended up in Boston. That's it. Now it's coming. I ended up in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
And then from Boston, that's when I had to take, they gave me they gave me,
Bus fare or train fare?
well, a chit,
Okay.
they call it
Yeah.
chit, to go to, whether it was on a train or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or a bus.
Yeah.
So they gave me transportation to my house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way they did it. They didn't leave us alone. They paid us our way.
Okay. Now, and then where did they discharge you? Did you go back to Great Lakes for that, or did they do that in Boston, or?
Oh, I had to go back to Great Lakes.
Okay.
I got discharged out of Great Lakes.
All right. So when did you get home?
It's on that paper.
Okay. That's the.
It's there.
You think it was the summer of '45, or here? Let's see. This says okay. This paper only gets you to the landing in southern France. So this is, but
No, I forget then.
okay.
I forgot. No, when
Do
I
you
got discharged,
Now, do you remember where you were when you heard that the Germans had surrendered? Were you still?
yeah, we were in France.
Okay, you're still in the boat then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was still in
All right.
France.
And then how about when the Japanese surrender in early August at the VJ Day?
That was there too.
Okay, so it's going to be after that. So maybe late
Yeah.
summer or fall of '45, you get to go home.
So at 40, I forget what month it was in July. I'll be done.
Okay.
Oh, it makes me mad.
That's all right.
I can look it up.
right.
I got my discharge papers. Oh, I can get my discharge.
Well, not right now. It's okay. We'll just check that afterward. Okay, but you get to go home.
yeah.
So you came back home and you initially went back to where you had been working, but then
Yeah.
you had
Oh,
quit
yeah.
that job because you told me that story. You quit the job, and then you went to work for another fellow who trained you for die cutting or.
Yeah. Well, see, no, when I first came to the States, I came back to Metal Office Furniture Company. And the skipper, I'm not the skipper, but
Foreman.
the foreman, Frank Harmon.
Yeah.
I says, Frank, I'm ready to go back to work. He says, oh, am I glad to see you, because I was good in improvising, assembling and stuff like
Right,
that. See?
right.
I was really good. I got to brag.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, am I glad to see you back, because I can't get to do the production that you got. Well, anyway, I started, and so I says, Frank, I says, what's my pay gonna be? He says, the same as what you got when you went. So I said, no, Frank, I says, the guys got a raises while I was overseas. He says, yeah, but you gotta prove that you're still good, that you were as good as you were. Well, if you think it any different, you go talk to Walt Idema, because Walt Idema, he was the company, super president.
Mm-hmm.
So I go back to Walt Idema, and I had a nice talk, because he had a son that was in the Air Force, and he got shot down. So anyway, Walt says, you go tell that damn fool, that's his exact words, so help me. You go tell that damn fool he's got to give you that raise.
Mm-hmm.
So I come back. He says, Frank says, Tony, he said, I just hung up. He says, just give you a nickel more an hour, and then if you prove, then we'll give you the raises. I says, that ain't the way I heard it. He says, Tony, he says, you guys that were fighting a war, you don't know how lucky you were to dodge bullets.
That's why he said that. Okay.
When he said that, he says, I couldn't get any meat and butter. When he said that, I double up my fist, and Al Terrell, he sat standing next to me. He goes like this to me. No. I said, Frank, take the job and shop.
Mm-hmm.
I got up and I left.
Mm-hmm.
I left. I didn't even go to see to Walt Idema. Because if I'd have gone to Walt Idema, he'd have got fired.
Yeah.
He would have fired him. But I didn't want that. I didn't want any trouble. I'm not into trouble. So I come home, and right across the street from me, his name, Otto Anderson.
There you go.
Otto Anderson just came to me.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, Tony, he says, when are you going to start working? I says, I'm not. He looked surprised. He is Swedish.
Mm-hmm.
And he says, what's the problem? And I told him. He says, that dirty SOB in broken Swedish.
Mm-hmm.
He said, that dirty SOB in broken Swedish. I didn't want to say the words.
Mm-hmm.
He says, you come and work for me. He says, I'll teach you
Mm-hmm.
trade. That's when I learned tool and die.
Right.
Otto Anderson is,
Mm-hmm.
Otto Anderson is the one that taught me tool and
Right.
die. He started working on pistons for the plungers for die-cast machines. What a dusty, dirty old job. I got through that. They sent me to school, and over there at the school, I could get it. But anyway, they told me that junior college.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you got the best die-cast die maker in the country teaching you,
Mm-hmm.
because they know. I said, oh, I'm glad to hear that. Well, I didn't get my walking papers, so I go back. Do you know, by his teaching, with Otto Anderson's teaching me the trade,
Mm-hmm.
and there's tricks in die-cast. I could have gone to Holland, because the Grand Rapids Brass Company wanted to send me to Holland to work and start
Mm-hmm.
crew over there in Holland with, what was the name of that outfit? I said, no, I was going to what ended up my wife at the
Mm-hmm.
time, see? Well, I wasn't going to leave her.
Mm-hmm.
I said, no way am I going to go over there to work on that crew. She said, well, it's up to you. You're welcome to go to Holland.
Mm-hmm.
I said, no, I'm going to stay home. I said, I'm going with a wonderful girl now. We're going to get married. We did.
So you were, but weren't you married before you went into the service?
I was married before. I lost my first wife.
Oh, she died.
She died. Yeah, she died cancer. She had bone cancer.
Okay.
She had bone cancer. And then my second wife, she
Mm-hmm.
died too with heart trouble.
But a long
But the
time
good Lord
afterwards.
bless me.
Yeah.
Two wonderful, 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 beautiful women.
Mm-hmm.
They were just out of this world. And I felt terrible that I had to lose my second wife, because they were both beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
both wonderful girls.
All right. But anyway, in the meantime, you were going to stay where you were. You weren't going to go off to Holland.
No way. No.
So did you wind up staying and working for one company for a long time then?
Yeah, Grand Rapids Brass.
Okay.
I worked at Grand Rapids Brass. Well, as I was working there, the girls were telling my wife to be, says, when you go through the tool room, because they had to go through an opening like a garage door
Mm-hmm.
to go outside to eat. And they went out there. They told her, take a look at Tony. He just lost his wife here a couple of years ago. He's a good catch. All that stuff. Oh, they were telling her, if it wasn't for him, I probably got married earlier, maybe. But anyway, I was true to faith, because I had a wonderful wife. And nobody else was going to be good to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you got to look at Tony. He's a good catch. So anyway, I went in, and there's this one girl. When she went through this one time, she was married. When our eyes met, eye to eye, eyeball, we fell in love, just like that. And that's the honest to God truth. We both fell in love right there and there. She was married, but they were having problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when they told her, you know, there's a good catch if you get divorced.
Mm-hmm.
And then she did. She got a divorce, and then we got married.
Mm-hmm.
But I could have had a better wife. She was a jewel. I never had any children of my own.
Mm-hmm.
But I got the most wonderful grandchildren now, because she had
Mm-hmm.
a child,
Okay.
which multiplied to children, grandchildren. I got great-grandchildren already.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. And then somewhere along the line, you built this house too, right?
Yeah, we built this house because we lived on Burton Street first, right across the Immaculate Heart Church. And there's a story too. Right across the street was Chadwick's greenhouses. And Chadwick's greenhouses, Morris Chadwick, I was like a son to him. He treated me like a son. In fact, he had a son, but he didn't have much to do with his son. Bruce was his name. But Morris took me under his wing. Oh, they were wonderful to me. And how it ended.
So how did this get to your house? Or how did you get the land? You see, you were living over on Burton over there.
Yeah, I lived on Burton Street. And there was, I worked at Carbonell Industries. That's it. I worked at Carbonell Industries. They made speakers there for hi-fi and stuff. And it was, there was a girl working there at Carbonell that used to work for, I forget now. I'm a little bit confused.
Okay.
But anyway, I fell in love with my wife when I first saw her, and we got married. That's it. We got married, and we bought a house on Burton Street. From Burton Street, we lived there, 1722 Burton Street, right across from the church. Well, at the church property, Chadwick had the greenhouse there because I helped him out in the greenhouse watering. It's coming to me a little at a time. And he says, Tony says, why don't you take over the greenhouse? I says, Morris, it's kind of you to offer it to me, because he was going to give it to me. He says, why don't you take over the greenhouse? I says, no. I says, the church is interested in the property. Let Immaculate Heart Church have it. Father Kilgore was a parish. I said, let Father Kilgore have the property, because they deserve it. He said, but I'd like to have you do it. So, no, I says, I'm happy where I'm living. So, that's how Immaculate Heart owes me gratitude for letting them have that land, because I could have been living there, had that property. And what else?
Well, but then you found this piece of land over here.
Yeah, well, as I was living on Burton Street, I had a lady that worked at Carbonell. She says, Tony, she says, there's a lot right across the street from me. That's a good area. You ought to come over there and see it. So I did. I come out here and I saw it. I had a choice of this land, which is, it had a little drop there, but and there was a lot right across the street. It was for what they call low level, for basement, level house.
Right.
Walkout basement.
Yeah. Right.
And I said, no, I'd be interested in this lot. So I went to see not McCrath. McCrath is the one that owned this plat. And so I got, how in the heck was it? Yeah, I had a chance to get this lot or the lot across the street, which I didn't want to walk out.
Right, so you picked this one.
And I took this one. So we built this house here, the wife and I. We saw a house plan which we thought was good walkout pattern at a home show. So as we built this house, we made changes on it, even a porch. So the wife had to have a porch. So we improvised a porch with the roof to blend everything. And that's how we got this house. This is her idea, the porch and everything.
It's a nice house.
Well, it's not bad. She made all the curtains. She made drapes. She made everything. I had the most wonderful wife. Oh, God bless her. She was a jewel.
All right. Now, when you kind of look back a little bit at the time that you spent in the Navy, how do you think that affected you? Had you learned anything from that, or
From the Navy?
yeah, or did it change you at all, or were you just the same guy?
I'm the same guy.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't change personality at all.
Right.
In fact, I made many friends. I got friends that they still send me
Right.
cards
Mm-hmm.
that they live in Annandale, Virginia,
Right.
and Goshen, Indiana, and where I can't think
Mm-hmm.
straight.
That's okay.
But I hear from those guys to this day. In fact, they come here to visit me. Even when my wife, they come with their wives and we go out for lunch and all
Mhm.
that. My buddies, they come here to visit me. At least 3 of them that live close by.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know which one it is now.
That's okay. Well, I tell you, it makes for a good story, and you still remember quite a bit of it. So I'd just like to close this out by thanking you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Well, I wish I could talk more plainer, more quickly, because I know that's on time, because that's tape and all that. But I have so much to say about the area and the way I grew up and the way everything worked out. But I'm getting, my mind is worn out. When you get to be 100, you don't think the same as you
That's
did when you
okay.
were younger.
Nobody's going to believe you're 100 anyway, so thank you.